fasting is an incredible healing tool, and both men and women should be exploring all aspects of fasting. Fasting is very much like sleep. We need it. It's a healing state for our bodies, and we can go deeper into that. But when you look at the human brain and body, there's not a lot of differences on how we should sleep between the sexes, but there is in how we should fast. And that's what we need to get out to women, so that women know how to fast correctly, so they can get, like what your friend got, how can they get the benefits and not the downsides that can happen for women with fasting.
How are we different to men? Because women and men that live together need to have a different approach. This is what I'm finding out.
Yes. So I'll make it really simple. Men hormonally work off a 24-hour system, and they have one hormone that they have to focus on, and that's testosterone. Testosterone comes in every 15 minutes. All hormones pulse, but for men, it's like every 15 minutes they're getting another dose and another dose of testosterone, and testosterone will go up into their brains and convert into estrogen. So they only need to focus on one, and they need to think about it in a 24-hour period. Women, we have 3 sex hormones that run us: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And we don't work off a 24-hour system. We work off a monthly system. And so these 3 hormones are pulsing in at different times throughout our menstrual cycle. And here's the tricky part. All 3 of these hormones want something a little different when it comes to both food and fasting. And the best way I can explain this is when you look at estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen's coming in the front half of our cycle, progesterone's coming in the back half of our cycle. I look at them like sisters. We call them both sex hormones. They're in the same hormone family, but they have vastly different personalities. Estrogen is going to love when you fast. You keep glucose low, insulin low, estrogen loves it. Estrogen's very forgiving of cortisol. And so if cortisol spikes, which it does with fasting, just like it does with exercise, estrogen doesn't care. But progesterone's completely the opposite. She likes glucose to be higher, which is why we crave carbs the week before our cycle. It's not your lack of discipline. Your progesterone's building up your desire to eat more carbs. And progesterone gets shy when cortisol goes high. So, we can't have a lot of stress or progesterone goes away. I really think of them like estrogen's the extrovert that's like the party gal, and progesterone's like the introvert that's like, no, we're going to stay on the couch. We're going to eat a little bit more. We're going to go a little more inner. And that is how the feminine body is designed.
The language that you use around our cycles is so eloquent, but I also just, from coming from a science background and sometimes struggling with the concepts of how we describe parts within our human body, you really empower this within your book, within these 4 phases, which I want to get to. But before we even get into this, something that I would love just to approach with caution is, you do mention this too, on how certain types of women, whether they're pregnant or lactating or eating disorders, how to approach this just with some caution. Just at the very beginning, I just love to for you to mention some of these key groups and concepts that we should just be having in the top of our mind when approaching fasting.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I look at fasting for women as a flexible tool. And so you've got to find your own rhythm. Our bodies are built off of rhythm. So I don't want to see women get rigid with the fasting ideas. I want women to be curious and understand how each one of these fasts works for them. When we look at certain groups, one of the challenges we have is if you have an eating disorder, you don't take the fasting journey by yourself. Get a health coach, get whoever is working with you. Maybe it's a psychologist, maybe it's a doctor. Have them walk that path with you. This is why, I'm trying to get to the doctors. I'm trying to get the science out there so that we can start to collaborate with people who could use fasting but need a little more structure in it. So the first one would be any eating disorder. The second two that I'm really can't emphasize enough is pregnancy. So not your tool. Like fasting's not your tool when you're pregnant. There's other great tools like focus on your microbiome because you're going to pass that down to your child. So focus on eating foods that support a healthy microbiome. And then once you deliver, then you can move into low level fasting, which leads me to the third group, which is nursing moms need to be clear that they are not fasting more than 15 hours because once we go over 15, we start to stimulate autophagy. And autophagy is where sometimes the cells will get rid of very dysfunctional cells that are packed with viruses and bacteria and heavy metals and toxins, and that goes into our lymph system, which goes into the milk, and then that goes into your baby. So you can do a 13-hour. I think 13 to 15 hours is great for nursing moms, but not more than that.
I'm so pleased that you mentioned that because my next question to follow on to all of this was, what is our ideal time to fast? Because on this series, we've got Dr. Sanchu Panda coming on, who is,
nice.
Renowned in circadian rhythms and intermittent fasting. And he looks a lot at the 16-hour rest window and the 8-hour eating window. What's your kind of take on how women should be fasting? What are the times that we should be resting and when should we be eating? What's our eating window looking like?
Yeah. So, by the way, I love the 16-8 fast, and I think Sachin Panda's work is incredible. And now let's just take something that's really cool and let's fit it to a woman. So that's, when you do that interview, it'll be a beautiful marriage to this interview because you will see one of the most epic studies ever done on this 16-8 approach. So I just want to point that out. In Fast Like a Girl, there are 6 different level fasts that I map out, and they're all based off of science, and they're based off of what I saw not only clinically in my practice, but now we've seen over worldwide from my online community that millions of women have started to apply. And the 6 different fasts are everything from a 13-hour intermittent fast all the way up to 72 hours of a immune reset water fast, which Walter Longo brought us. So for women, we have to look at these 6 different fasts like a Swiss Army knife. Sometimes you pull out the big knife, sometimes you pull out the little knife, sometimes you pull out the tweezers, and we all know sometimes you need the corkscrew. Like, let's just be honest. So,
that is true.
Right? Yeah. Sometimes you're like, forget the knives. I'm going straight to the corkscrew. I got to open something up. So, So look at it that way. There's possibility in all 6. And then what Fast Like a Girl did is really match those 6 to the different ebbs and flows of hormones. So, but I can't emphasize enough that this is a personal journey that you're going to make with fasting, which I know it's a lot easier. I mean, I look at Sachin Panda has a little easier job on his interview because he's just going to go in and tell you how amazing 16-8 is, which it is amazing. So he has 1 fast. I'm talking about 6 fasts timed to different parts of the menstrual cycle. And if you're a menopausal woman, you got to time it differently than a cycling woman. So there's a lot of nuance here, but that sort of gives you a framework in which we can work off of.
So what do these 6 fasts look like?
So we have 2 different ways we make energy. One is from the foods we eat, and one is in the absence of food. And so it takes about anywhere from 8 to 12 hours after your blood sugar spikes, after your last meal, to start to move you from a sugar burner to a fat burning energy system. So you're working off a different system. So the 12, 13 hours is what we consider intermittent fasting. Most people are officially in this state of fat burning, and we're starting to see inflammation come down, growth hormone go up, a little bit of testosterone kick in. So the body goes into a healing state around 12 hours. I always tell women like 13 to 15 is a sweet spot. Most women are going to want to do that on a semi-regular basis, and we can time it to the cycle here in a moment. About 17 hours without food, you're still in this healing, fat-burning state. Your body's going to go into autophagy. And if you think about it from the intelligence of the body, what it's doing is it's saying, hey, blood sugar hasn't come in, nutrients haven't come in, seems to be a mini crisis here. So don't be concerned about that word, because it's a hormetic stress. You're starting to see that the body has to get itself more efficient and stronger. So once you go to about 17 hours and you click into autophagy, what happens is the cells will get rid of aging and dysfunctional disease-producing cells get sloughed off. Cellular parts regenerate. The cell pushes toxins and viruses and bacteria out of the cell, and your trillions of cells start to become better versions of themselves. At 24 hours, the whole gut starts to reset. You get intestinal stem cells that come in and will reset your whole microbiome, so you can really overturn any years of birth control or antibiotics or steroid use or poor diet. We see a whole change in the gut. At 36 hours, the body goes, okay, this has been a long time. There's been no food. I better go find what I stored years ago. And it starts to break fat down at a faster rate. So I call it the fat burning reset. It's a great one for unsticking weight loss. At 48 hours, the whole dopamine system gets rebooted. Because if you think about it, now the intelligence of the body is like, hey, I need you clear. I need you motivated. I need you happy so you can go find food. And so what ends up happening is you reboot the whole dopamine system, plus you get new dopamine receptor sites that open up so that you're in all to save your life, because your body's it needs to go search for food. But those new receptors are there once you bring food back into the equation, I just want to point out. And then at 72 hours, the whole immune system gets rebooted. So what we have to realize, most people when they go into fasting, they think that they're going to die. But what I'm advocating for, as long as those windows may seem, is that this is micro-dosing for a lack of a better word, of like coming in with these 6 different fasts in order to create a bit of a hormetic stress on the body so that the body has to become stronger. And that, I'm not talking 30-day fasts. I'm saying these 6 from 13 hours to 72 hours, you can really maximize healing in a way that we have never seen before.
Okay, I got to interrupt this video because I have a free guide for you so you can master fasting. It's called A Beginner's Guide to a Fasting Lifestyle. And all you've got to do is click here and you can jump right in.
There's going to be a whole range of people listening to this where some might have already engaged in that, some haven't. I'm just thinking about my mother who, when I've asked her to fast, she can't fast for 12 hours because she thinks she might faint. Yeah. So what's your kind of concept on that, where people just say, well, I actually really struggle to fast. I actually really struggle to miss breakfast because I feel like my brain's not going to be firing efficiently, or I need glucose in this sector, or my blood sugar is too low.
Take this with love if you're one of those people. You've been lied to. And we thought 6 meals a day, breakfast was the most important meal of the day. All of that was going to improve our metabolism. And there's no scientific evidence that eating all the time actually stimulates your metabolism. We know different now, even though fasting is an ancient healing tool, we know different. And science like that Sachin's doing is really starting to prove to us that difference. So if you can't go without food, it's really because you've trained your body to eat all day. And it's a training to go without food. And that's going to be a little uncomfortable in the beginning, but that's okay. The key to longevity, the key to health is not to stay in the comfort zone. The key is to dip in and out of discomfort. I'm not telling you be uncomfortable your whole life and white knuckle this. I'm saying the longer you stay in comfort, whether it's with food or life, or even like, look at all the cold plunging that is like taking over the world. It's because people are putting themselves in these micro events that move them into discomfort, and the body heals. So it would be a training for your mother. And I think this is where the science helps, so that she understands she's not going to die. But I can't tell her it won't be uncomfortable. The cool thing is, if she tried intermittent fasting, like 13 hours, within a couple of weeks, she would come back and thank you. First 2 days, she would probably complain to you.
She would, definitely.
Sorry. You might have somebody else. Yeah, you might have somebody else tell her. Just saying.
I know, me telling her things doesn't really go down very well. But I'm just, I think about it as you're talking from this, that we now live in this Western world where convenience food and food is 2 minutes down the road or a click away on our phone. And we've come into this kind of consumerism, processed, also the food that we're consuming is hitting our, dopamine receptors, serotonin receptors, telling us that we want more, that quick fix.
Yep.
Going back to evolution, we didn't have the abundance of food that we have today. So that's also how I think about fasting, right? It's kind of, food is everywhere and we want to survive. So we want to eat more food, but it's actually kind of doing the opposite.
Yeah. And the best way to grab this concept, you're absolutely right, is that, go back to our primal ancestors. Let's just look at their habits because they had the same human body that we have. This always blows my mind. Like here we are able to have a beautiful conversation in different parts of the world. Our technology is so sophisticated, but the human body has not changed from the cave primal days. And in those days, they didn't come out of the cave and have an iPhone to pick up and get food to come to them. They didn't have a refrigerator. They didn't have a pantry. And they probably didn't have food on many days. So they had to go search for food. In that search, they had to be strong. They had to be mentally clear. They had to be focused so they could go hunt food. They could go get food for their survival. And so in the book, I talk about something called a thrifty gene hypothesis, which is this idea that the humans that evolved out of those primal days had a genetic profile that allowed them to become stronger without food. And the ones that didn't have this genetic profile didn't continue past those primal days. But the belief is that we have that gene in us today, all humans. So when we're eating all day, what we're doing, and catch this, really think about this, what we're doing is we're now going against our genetic design. Just like the people who didn't survive the primal days, that didn't have that gene that allowed them to go with food, maybe they had to have more food on a regular basis, they didn't survive. We're at a point where we may not survive or we may build chronic disease a lot quicker if we're not getting a break from food periodically.
It's such an interesting narrative to form in one's mind, isn't it? Because we don't think about this. I think a lot of times, and I started looking at fasting many years ago from a health problem for my gut microbiome. And now it's obviously come a lot more into the forward-facing media of weight loss and all of these kind of desirable concepts. But actually, which sounds like, well, human bodies are designed to fast because that's when the real healing can take place. And it's just what you said at the beginning. It's like sleep. It's like letting your body sleep and rest. It's the same with our internal systems.
Yeah. And that's why in the book, I start off by let's just take the diet culture and let's just talk about where it's led us down such a bad path. Because what I hear a lot of people, this was about 2 years ago, everybody interviewing me was like, why are we still talking about fasting? Is that really a thing? Well, yeah, I mean, if you put it in the fad diet category, it would seem strange that every year fasting is becoming more and more popular. But this is not a fad diet. This is a healing state you're going to dip in and out of to repair your body. And what I love about it, probably more than anything, is it's free. And so it's an equalizer. Everybody can do it. I mean, I'll tell you here in America, if you want to eat organic, you're going to have a little bit of money to be able to buy organic because it costs more to get the food without the chemicals on it. We've gotten to a place where if you want to eat clean, nourishing food that supports your health, it's going to cost you more and you're going to need a little more time to make the food, get the food. So we need an equalizer. And fasting is that because it puts you in this healing state.
Okay, are you fasting and you're still not losing weight? Check out this video because you might be missing a key part of your fasting experience that's going to unlock weight loss. So if you think about it, all the humans that emerged out of that time have the gene that allows us to go without food. And that gene, they believe, is in all of us today.